strategy must be involved in the creation of it. Now think about that for a moment. Structure came last. But I'm telling you, the people that are going to implement the strategy must be involved in creating it. So there's a bit of a dilemma. And how do you actually handle that? Well, there's 4 ways that you can get some success in that element. When you're going through this strategic process, one of the things you can do is have a facilitator give you a hand on something to do documentation. A facilitator has very big ears. They write extremely well, and they only speak in order to get clarification. They have no original ideas. That's their job. And a good facilitator is frankly hard to find because they have to separate their opinion, they have to separate previous experience, they have to separate prejudices that they have in order to help you build your strategy. Now, frankly, you do not need a facilitator. I've been in many situations where you create a strategy and you hand the facilitation role around to different people on the team. But a facilitator is a must if you can't separate your ability to take somebody else's idea and write it down and move on. You need somebody that can do that. So it's a role that you can have. So there's the role of a facilitator. A facilitator with those big ears and that good hand takes very good documentation of all the ideas that you're working on. And then you need what these 2 gentlemen here are struggling with, which is how do you get understanding and agreement? Well, it's a bit of a trade-off because what this person over here wants is maybe not what this person over here wants or needs. So you have some of those sorts of things. I call this just understanding and agreeing. Making a little bit of trade-off, getting into some good discussion until you have a very good idea as to what you want to do together. And then there's a 4th thing you can do, which is try a test case, and you can have a lot of fun with this. So here's the thing. You've got a vision, you've got a group of people, you bring them together, you decided you're going to either get a facilitator to help you or you're going to facilitate this yourself, starting to write down ideas. If you jump right in to the strategy of the thing that is most important for you, which is the strategy of the company that you're trying to build, the organization you're trying to create, anything like that, what typically will happen is a particular idea will be suggested and it'll have a flavor to it of, say, it's sales oriented or it's marketing oriented or it's engineering oriented. And what everybody will do is look to the person on the team that has the title that includes that responsibility. That's why you can be doomed right from the very beginning. And you don't want to do that. So how do you not do it? You go through an exercise of test. A test case can be a lot of fun because it's got to be something that doesn't represent what anybody in the room normally does. So just some ideas, because there's an infinite number of ideas. These are ones that these have a lot of fun with. The group's responsibility is to write and sell an international best-selling book, and you've only got an hour and a half to put that whole idea together. You will find out that the guy who's actually in charge of finance probably has as many good ideas about how you write a book as the person in HR does. Host a huge party. When I say huge, I mean big. Something beyond anything you comprehended before. Because I live in Vancouver, I did this with a group, said we're going to organize the Olympics. And we got an hour and a half to do it. That was a lot of fun. Probably the most controversial, but the one I had the most fun with is the last one. I mean, no disrespect by this, but invent a new religion. Would you like to invent a new religion? You can have a gas with that one because everybody has some sort of really hard feeling on something in a religion. One that I was with, developed years ago, was one that I had my own heart into. In Canada, churches do not pay any kind of taxes. So we had a group and we put together the Church of the Holy Rotation. So the church moved from one residence to another, so none of us had to pay taxes. That was the strategy we were developing. So it's just a matter of doing something that, of course, has nothing to do with your business and gets everybody engaged. What the heck is consensus? Well, it is not democracy. It is not something that you achieve by voting, and very important, it is not perfection. What it is, and this does not come from the dictionary, I did not look up the dictionary, you can do that on your own. This comes from the hard reality of having done this so many times, is all consensus is it is a state of agreement and understanding that everybody will support on something. So that's why I use the words understand and agree. If as you conclude that this is the idea, this is the particular idea that we want to do, and then we'll move on to the next one, if each person that is involved in that process visibly and audibly says, I understand that point and I agree, and if each person does that, you don't have perfection, you have consensus, and you can move on. You've now got something you can work with. Consensus works because fundamentally a group of people that are all goal-oriented, they're intelligent, they're engaged, they've got some commonality as to why they're involved in this strategizing session on its own anyway. In consensus, where they all say they understand and agree the aspects as you go through it, they will not be completely wrong. That might sound like not a very big achievement, but it is huge. It is absolutely huge that you have not done something completely wrong, that you're giving yourself a chance to be right. And take your time. Because if somebody says, I don't get it, I don't understand that point, well, okay, you've got 10 people, and it takes a few hours until you reword it, till you really get to where everybody understands it, that's fine. Because if you don't do that, you will spend weeks or months fixing things once you've started and have to restart. That's why it's so important. When I was a much, much younger man, although I'm not quite as old as Dad, I'm really close. And when I was so much younger, I was a ski instructor, professional ski instructor. Somebody actually paid me to do that sort of thing. And when you're a professional ski instructor, you're cool. You're cool. You've got the best studs, and you've got a wonderful suit. You can do anything, according to everybody else on the ski hill. So you're a bit of a god. You're cool. Well, the Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance has a very good attitude to that. Their attitude is that if you are an expert and your student does not learn, you are at fault. You are to blame. Instant uncool. You're not cool anymore when all of a sudden it's your fault that dummy can't learn how to ski. That can be applied in anything. There's a corollary to it which I really like, which is if you are explaining something to someone and they don't understand it, rather than walk away from that thinking, oh, that's wonderful, I'm smart, they're dumb, think of it this way. If you are explaining something to someone and they don't understand it, they probably leave that conversation with the impression that, one, you actually don't know what you're talking about, or two, you know what you're talking about, but you don't want them to know what you're talking about. So if you keep those humbling thoughts in mind, it will help you in your communication. And communication is so important because if everybody in that group has gone through the consensus-making process of I understand and I agree, and we're going to move this forward, they can communicate that to the people they need to in their own words. And they'll probably do it about 80% the way you would do it in your words. And the people they talk to will get it. So now you're getting your strategy communicated out to a much broader base. How do you make sure that your competitor doesn't get it, so they don't just copy you? You know what I'd like you to do about that? Forget about it. Don't worry about it. The process that you have just gone through to create your strategy has been something that has been very difficult to do, you will find, when you get through that. Then when you try and communicate, you will find that is very difficult to do. Each step is actually very difficult to do. So it's not that the strategy is so brilliant. The only thing you know from the previous slide is that it's not completely wrong. If it's not completely wrong, it's all about how do you put it together. I don't care if my competitor has my strategy, because they'll never put it together as well as we do, because we built it. And we know how hard it was to build it, and we know how hard it is to implement it. So don't worry about it. Forget about your competitor when it comes to that. Just make mistakes. Please make them as quickly as possible. Make them as often as possible. You'll become successful way faster. I have a model on this, which I've talked about forever, and I still don't never believe whether anybody believes me, but I look at it this way, and I say, every decision I have ever made is wrong, but it's not completely wrong. I look at it as this is completely wrong, this is brilliantly correct. Unfortunately, I don't do that very often either. But somewhere in between, when I make a decision, is where I land. So let's say it's over here, mostly wrong. Okay, that was a wrong decision. But I now have erased all this stuff. I know I don't have to go there again. And the whole idea is once you've made your first decision, you monitor it, then you make a second decision. Now you're starting here. And again, I'm wrong. And you keep doing that until you get almost perfectly right, and yet you never made a correct decision. All you did was make bad decisions, wrong decisions. But if you keep doing them because you're not afraid of making mistakes, you keep fixing them, and you move on. Next, delegate what you do best. I learned this one very early in my career, and I think it's so, so important. Most of us in this room probably have people that work for us. We are in some sort of management role. The very first management role you get, there is a tendency for people to think, oh, great, I've now got somebody who can do all this stuff I hate because I'm going to do this stuff I love. It's counterintuitive to say, great, I'm going to give somebody all the stuff I love and I'm going to do the stuff I hate. It's counterintuitive. Most people won't do it. So why is it so important that you do? If you delegate the thing you do best, the person you are now delegating responsibility to has a terrific mentor. Because every time they come to you with some sort of issue, you can work with them. And you'll give them really good advice. And they'll love it. And I think, wow, you're brilliant. That's pretty good. And you give them the thing that you do second best. The same dynamic happens. They keep coming to you, you give them all this good advice. You keep going down until finally you get to a point where, actually, you don't know very much about this. And they come to you for advice, and by then you train them to say, well, what would you do? And they say, well, I do this. And you say, hey, that's a pretty good idea. How did you do that? Yeah, you're smart. You're a really good boss. I think, long story short, you end up with respect of the people that are working for you who are doing a fabulous job and things you don't know anything about. And if you got a bunch of those people, you're way more effective if you just work on things, not doing it.